Hey guys, welcome to the Lunge and Lift podcast. Today we have jumped on the 2023 bandwagon and we're going to give you our thoughts and feelings on how we're going to tweak, adjust, and change our training and lifestyle. It's obviously the time of year where everyone's setting resolutions and new goals. So we just give you our thoughts on our plans, what we're changing, and hopefully it will help you plan your year a little bit better. And hopefully there's a few nuggets to adjust, tweak, and upgrade your training and potentially lifestyle as well. But before we get into it, as always, a big thank you to our show sponsors, thetrainingstimulus.com. If you're a coach, PT, therapist who works with somebody who moves and you're looking to upgrade your service and stand out in the fitness industry in 2023, then please get in touch and check out the website to learn more about our movement mechanics mentorship. Wit-fitness.com. Please use our discount code LL15 if you'd like to get 15% off your Wit kit. And Hydro, please use our discount code LL20 for all your blood flow restriction apparel. Rob, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, mate, and happy New Year to you guys too. Thank you very much for joining us again for another year of podcasting.
Congratulations on Dylan.
Thank you.
I was going to say giving birth to Dylan, but you didn't do that.
I didn't do that. I'll tell you what, though. So obviously, I don't want to go into too much detail, but the hospitals were measuring him small. So because he was measuring small, so from 32 weeks, they basically kept monitoring, measuring, and saying, right, it's going to come out a bit too small, so it'd probably be better to come out earlier than later. So then you can obviously start giving him the breast milk and foods to help him grow. And so I ended up having a planned C-section, and compared to Chloe, which was a natural birth. And I'll tell you what, it was so cool, the C-section stuff. And not that I got to watch any of it, which was annoying. I did try. Trust me, I tried. But what I loved to see was how it was so methodical. There was like two of everyone. Everyone knew their role. And we just watching like a bit of artwork being done. It was just everything was done to. It was great. And it was a lot less stressful than the natural way. So it was a lot more calmer. But obviously Hannah essentially then had major surgery and has now obviously had to recover a little bit more from that. And that's been quite a journey. But it's been unreal having Dylan. And also, like, one of the nicest things to see was when we brought Dylan home and showed him to Chloe, and just tears started falling out my eyes. It was just like when she held him, and just like, oh, it was such a magical thing to see. So yeah, it was cool. But thank you very much.
Well, pleasure. Don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but I actually have seen a cesarean section.
Have you?
In the operating theatre. I did some medical work experience. When was it? Probably like 16 years ago now, when I was thinking about what I was going to do at uni. My auntie is a doctor, and I literally was over the surgeon's shoulder while he did the cesarean section.
Blimey.
And it is an unbelievable thing that we've, as humanity, have been able to do. It's just, like you said, it's almost like a Formula One pit crew where everyone just knows exactly what they're doing. It's so they're not blasé in terms of being like unprofessional, but it's
just
so
another thing,
routine.
isn't it? It's so routine.
It's a crazy thing that you're actually doing. You're cutting someone open to extract the baby. But yeah, it's I'd echo your sentiments that it's a phenomenal thing that we can do. So
that's amazing. And I was looking at that, they had a board in the operating theatre, and it was just like all the timings were written to the minutes of when things were injected, when this was done, and what. And I was just like, I loved it. As someone who quite likes order, it was it ticked all the boxes for me. And then to hear him come out crying and stuff like that was just amazing, because it's just obviously that's what some people say about C-sections, that sometimes they come out not breathing, so they have to kind of be started. But so to have that, and it's so funny. Just as soon I didn't know this, but so he comes out and I just see balls in my face. I was like, God damn! I was like, that's why you're growing small, mate. There's all the growth has gone there. So I was just like, but apparently that's normal. So I was just like, Jesus. I was like, fair play, son, fair play. So
it's normal for the balls to grow first.
No, apparently no. It's just the balls are a lot bit more swollen and stuff at the start. So something I did hear is I'm listening to a book just on this, and then we'll move on. But that you're born with the same amount of test levels that you have at when you start puberty. So what you have tests in the body, it drops off, it peaks up a little bit, I think about either 4 or 6, I can't remember, then takes back off until you hit puberty. So you're basically born with a fuckload of testosterone, which is why babies get erections and stuff like that. So I was like, I didn't know these things, but yeah. So it's been fascinating because it's like obviously I've had the pleasure and experience of like raising Chloe and seeing a whole different side to life of having a girl. But
Yeah.
now just kind of seeing like what my parents saw with me, I'm just like, I'm getting weed on, pooed on. I'm like, great. The weed on thing is jokes. Like you're like changing his nappy. Next thing you know, you're getting hit by piss. You're like, oh fuck, cover it up. So it's entertaining. But yeah, it's definitely been a shift into like kind of we had our routine, our how everything was done, and now it's like uprooted everything and kind of remind you about the simplicity of life again. So it's nice. But with that simplicity, kind of brings an opportunity to think, okay, how can I make it complicated again? So, what are some of the changes that you've kind of kicked the year off with, or started last year and carrying on into this year?
Yeah, I think we wanted to do this episode because obviously New Year's resolutions are a big thing. I'm not usually one for resolutions, but I think this year it was a nice point to sit back and have a reflection on, yeah, where everything is and incorporate some tweaks because the downtime around Christmas, I think, gives you the opportunity to do some things that maybe you haven't had time for during the year. And one of these for me was actually caffeine related. I'm a big coffee lover and can't remember the last time I didn't have a coffee for probably like years leading into this Christmas. So I thought it would be a good idea to just see where my dependency is at. And I took a couple of days off just having decaf, and it was a bit concerning how the first day where I didn't have any proper coffee, the morning was absolutely fine. I didn't notice any difference really, but the afternoon I had a pounding headache. Felt like I was wearing a headband that was too small. Was the only way I could think about it, and that
Yeah.
it was sort of from temple over the head to the other temple, just pressure, like vice-like pressure, and concentration was, yeah, impossible really. So that was quite a wake-up call to show just how much I'm relying on it day to day. But once I got through that, I think I did 2 days without any. I would just have another one before training, and I felt the benefits much more. Like I definitely felt much sharper, much more energized. And the other thing, so I forgot to say, from the caffeine-free days was I slept in probably 2 hours longer than I would normally, which I would normally be unable to do. Once I'm awake, I'm up. And so I think that told me that I'm probably operating in a little bit of a sleep debt day to day, that the caffeine is masking essentially. So this year, I'm going to do at least a day a week caffeine free, and hopefully more. So on days where I haven't got loads and loads that I need to be in absolute top form for, and it's a low training day, then I think I'm going to do decaf only. But we'll see how that goes, because I know what I'm like. If there's anything that's important going on, I want to be 100%, which means caffeine needs to be in the system. But that was a good learning for me.
Yeah, I remember a
How about
couple of years back, I did caffeine free for the whole month for 30 days. And it was amazing having my first flat white afterwards, how energized I felt. And I felt so switched on. I was like, fuck, this is great. And I was like, right, I'm going to just keep it to like one coffee when I train. Quickly got back into it because you chase that buzz again and you're back in. But it's for the past, I'd say past year. I'd say maybe, I don't know, around that. But basically, my first coffee of the day is always decaf anyway. So it was pretty much since listening to Huberman when he said about, not having caffeine at the start of the day, just to help again with your energy levels, help with sleep. Because I didn't want to stop having coffee, I just bought a tasty decaf. So I normally, back then, I was having Square Mile, like their decaf is bang on. So I still got the process of having a hot coffee, still doing my thing, and I'd go between that and bone broth. So like having a nice bone broth first thing in the morning, because it's more the hot drink that I'm after. So I found a really nice one on Amazon, like a bone broth with collagen, like all natural shit, like in a glass jar. So it's good, but it's a nice way to kind of start your day, because most people it's a habitual thing. that they're trying to kind of keep up with, and then they think, I can't not have coffee. It's like, you probably can not have coffee. You just need to say, okay, what is the alternative? And then understanding that you can still go through it. And like for me, generally, that one decaf, then I have a normal coffee about 9 before I train, and then I might have, if I'm training in the afternoon, I'll have like a decaf espresso, so I'm still getting the pretend stimulant, but because it's, as I said, it's more of a habitual thing. I want something to kind of get me going, so I'll have that, and I'll probably have some honey and then go and train. So that's how I've been like navigating my afternoon training, but rather than applying a load of Noco or anything like that into the afternoon.
Yeah, I think that's smart, and it's one of those things that sort of creeps along in the background. I think that's the lesson I learned, is that day to day I'm leaning on it more than I think I am. So having that clear illustration of how much I'm leaning on it is a good wake up call. And just resetting that sleep debt, I think, is the important thing. Paying off your credit card bill every week means you're not kidding yourself as to how rested you actually are or are not.
It's funny,
but you've been doing.
I've been doing cold plunges on that. So it's like kind of like, so chasing essentially that high. So that high, that buzz of like caffeine, you get that from having a cold plunge. And so I started probably in December after my competition. I realized I was just being a bit too YOLO. I was, I was comfortably sitting around that 110 kilo mark, eating whatever I wanted, drinking quite a fair bit. And I was like, fuck, get better. Let me just do something uncomfortable. So I started doing the cold showers again. And so I started doing the cold showers, and I was a bit like, this is fine. It's not nice, but it wasn't really challenging. I was like, do you know what? I want to look into getting one of these, like, you see all these cold tubs that now people sell, like the inflatable ones and stuff like that. I was like, cool, I'll probably get one of those. And they're like £100. And I was a bit like, I don't really want to pay £100 if I'm not going to use it. I was like, am I really going to use it, or is this just a fad? Because I see so many people on, say, social media doing it. It's like, I'm definitely jumping on the bandwagon for getting one of these things. But I'm like, I know the benefit of cold exposure, and I'm like, I'd like to give it a try. So I then saw someone use an old whiskey barrel. They had it refurbished and made it into a cold tub now. So I bought one of those. I found a local place, £35. I was like, right, £35 to see if I can do it every day in January, and into, like I'd said, I've given myself the goal of roughly around mid-Feb to end of Feb to see if I do it daily, to see if I then invest in a proper one. Because if I can get myself into this barrel, because I am a little bit big for it, I don't fully fit, and to get into it is quite uncomfortable. I have to really like make myself into like the fetal position, like getting into right little ball, trying to get it up to my neck, which I've been told many times on social media, you need to get everything up to your neck in. I'm like, I know this, I'm just too big for the barrel. And unless I get one of these massive like wine barrels, like 1,000 litre type massive things, again, that costs money. So I'm like, £35. I'm more using it as a habitual thing. And for me, the whole cold plunge thing is like, there are many benefits to it. They talk about like, deeper sleep, improved recovery, reduce inflammation, stuff like that. But for me, one of the reasons that I've kind of got behind it is because it gives me 2 minutes at the moment every day where I'm not getting distracted by anything else, and I'm just focusing on being in the cold, the breathing, and just overcoming something. Like every day now I've got in, beyond after day 3, I get in with no question. After my clients, whatever it is, and that's one other thing I've done is, old me would say, right, every morning cold plunge. That's what you're gonna do every morning. And it's like, I've taken that stress of every morning away and just said every day. Because it's like, sometimes I don't care enough to wake up at 4 a.m. before I got to be in work to do a cold plunge. So I'm like, I'm going to just do it after work. It might be 2 o'clock and the water be a bit warmer. Then cool, it's a day of a warmer day. But then the next day I start later so I can do it first thing in the morning. So, it's like I'm looking at it as a habitual thing to kind of hopefully start to incorporate other things based off the habits I build off with the cold plunges.
That's great. It's also a great thing to do before bed. I can't remember if we spoke about this before, but I did cold baths before bed for a while, and you're out like a light. You get out of the cold bath, dry off, get into bed. You're literally asleep before your head hits the pillow almost. So
this is why I'm not stressing about it, because like when I finish March on, I'm finishing there. When I do the evening shift, I get home say about 9. So I'm like, for me, that'll be cold. It'll be everything I need. It'll basically be like first thing in the morning, but last thing at night. And that's how I'm looking at it. I'm gonna do it that day, no matter what. So, if I feel like a little bitch, I'm going to do it probably midday where it's probably at its warmest.
Yeah. How are you filling it? Are you just using the garden hose pipe?
Yeah, the garden hose pipe. So what I have been doing, Sam Cornforth made me a great video. And it's like a movie trailer for like a tidal wave thing, and as I get in, it's brilliant. I'll have to see if I can put it in, but I'll send it to you. It's great. But I was basically filling it all the way up every day. So when I get in, obviously all the water pours out, but the way I've seen it as it refreshes the water, so it doesn't then just become too stagnant. So last night I left it about 3/4 full, so not as much come out. And it felt a bit colder. So what I am doing is underneath there, after about a minute, I start moving my hands around a lot more and trying to get some swirling action in the water because it's so tight. And how much colder you get. Like the shivering kicks in nearly instantly. Oh, it's great. But like I'm moving my hands, I'm trying to like brush, get all the water moving around me. But like how energized you feel coming out of it. It's so good. And it's like you talk about then being able to sleep. That sounds like conducive of like not good, being good for sleep, but I think because of how high you get, you crash into, then if you're in a nice warm bed, you can fall straight to sleep. So it's really cool, and I'm really enjoying it, and I just think it's giving me something to focus on every day. That's really easy that I can do, and it's just like if you can do this, you can do the rest of your shit you gotta do.
Nice, yeah, just easy wins.
Yeah. So,
that's good, mate.
Anything else have you gone before we get into like any training stuff, like any lifestyle stuff?
Yeah, the only other one I think is around social media. I think obviously using it for work, it's a slippery slope in that you just do get dragged on to more screen time than you want. And I think, taking some time off work over Christmas is great to sort of separate from that a little bit and just be a little bit more intentional with usage. So trying to keep it to small, discrete windows of using it intentionally. So if I'm posting something or if I'm replying to something, just treating it almost like an email inbox where I'm not on it all day. I just use it when I want to use it rather than the constant check-ins. And so in terms of practical tips that might be helpful for other people is setting it almost like an activity where you're actively using it for a short period of time and you're never passively or reactively using it. So I'll do a window in the morning to reply to any messages that came in overnight, and then if I'm posting something in the afternoon or evening, I'll do the same then and set a cutoff. And the other thing that I've literally just started is logging uses. So if I break those two windows, which has happened, I have to go into a note on my phone and count every day how many times I've done that, just to bring awareness to it. And I think it shows you how compulsive the use is, because those are basically unplanned, unnecessary usages. And I think you've got to have a bit of self-compassion or something to appreciate how well crafted these apps are to not force you, but to get you essentially addicted to checking when you don't want to. Like you're not going on for any specific reason other than it's habitual. So once I've started putting these into the notes to see how many times a day is this actually happening, it serves two purposes. One, it draws your attention to it, but also kind of shames yourself a little bit to say, look, you gave in here. So that's been good for just keeping the head a little bit clearer throughout the day. And I think you're amazed at how much time, not just time, but mental space it frees up, because you're not in that input mode. You're not consuming information. You can actually process and use your brain for thinking rather than just listening. So that's been the other big lifestyle one that I've changed and I'm looking forward to sticking to as far as I can this year.
I like it. And I've definitely found the same where when you get that feeling of if you've left your phone at home and you're like, I feel naked without it, but then you feel really good. You're like, oh, I actually feel really. It's the same thing with social media. It's like it's so easy to get suckered in. Like you get into like some reels and next thing you know, you're like half hour in, or you found a page that you're like, oh, this is quite good stuff. And again,
Yeah.
you're like half hour into scrolling through the content, you're like, fuck, like what, how has this happened? And that's either like, that's generally why I don't have the phone in the bedroom, because that's what I'd find. Like I used to have that there, that if say everyone fell asleep and I for some reason haven't, even though I'm normally on the first to fall asleep, I'd be like, oh, let me just check my phone or something. And then you're like
Yeah.
half hour in or an hour in, you're like, fuck, sleep's gonna be fucked now. And it's like, then you go to sleep and you're like, it's shit night sleep. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely a really good win to kind of have. And generally I have the usage thing on my phone, and I sometimes I'm going to just say no, I need to use more, but just generally I just have it as an awareness thing, as in like, look, try not to use it as much. But yeah,
Yeah, I think
so
that's it. It's crazy. And you just reminded me of something. One of my other mates has just had his second kid as well. Actually, and we were talking about it, and this just illustrates the addictive nature of using the phone. In that, he says like when his newborn wakes up in the middle of the night and he's like settling him to put him back to sleep, he'll often just get his phone out to occupy the time and be watching a few clips, whether they're sports clips or whatever, and the baby will fall back asleep and he'll be able to put him down. But he's just like, I'll still just be flicking through. It's like, I know logically that all I'm doing is eating into my sleep
yeah,
that I'm already getting far too little of. But even still, I'll flick onto the next video and the next video. And it's just like their ability to override what you know is good for you is quite
yeah,
frightening. When you think about it like that, it's like this guy's sleep deprived already and he's further sacrificing more sleep because he's watching like mildly entertaining videos essentially.
yeah. So
Nuts.
yeah, it is crazy, but at the end of the day, it's why they're paid the bucks that they're paid, and it's why they're as successful companies that they are, because they know how to do it. So training wise, mate, what has have you? I know you've kind of been a bit loosey goosey the back end of last year, kind of doing bits and bobs all over the place. Have you kind
Yeah,
of added any structure into this year? Got a bit more direction?
I have. Yeah, so the last 3 or 4 months of 2022 were, like you say, very unstructured. Lots of traveling, lots of random things going on, and probably enjoying myself a little bit too much.
Mm.
So I was basically just doing what I could when I could, and trying to keep things ticking over. And what I found was, because my frequency went down, and sometimes I train like once, twice a week, I would try to do too much in that one session, and it would not allow me to train as consistently as I wanted. So I might go to the gym and actually not really be recovered enough to push on from where I was. So I'm kind of just treading water a little bit. So I thought about how I'm going to approach it this year to counteract that. And it's essentially just picking the bare essentials. Like, what are the key things? What are the key movements I want to hit every week? And what's the key sort of volume to ensure I can keep making progress and progressively overload? So, what I settled on was a standard sort of 4 day split with a focus on squat, hinge, push, and pull. And I will do a second push or pull movement on the squat and hinge days, and literally one accessory movement on top. So there's only 3 movements per session and 4 sets of each. So 12 working sets, super simple, ticking the key boxes. And it just means I can get the sessions done in half an hour, kind of no problems. And I know that I'm going to keep progressively overloading those simple movements and then using the warm ups to add in a lot of the variation that I want and need. Um, Mainly focusing on the plyometric side of things. I think that podcast we had with Matt McInnes
Mm.
Watson was a nice kick up the bum for something that I'd wanted to incorporate into my training for a long time now. And my view on it is that I'd much rather have sort of springy, bouncy, agile. It's predominantly going to be in the legs. Um, yeah, lower body rather than big, strong lower body. Like, I don't want my legs to, slow me down, weigh me down, and I'd much rather have that sort of springy, athletic feel rather than just be go back to big, heavy barbell stuff. And so far, it's been great. Like, just nice, simple sessions, and seeing the progress already. The other big change is incorporating a lot more zone 2 work, again, inspired by a podcast and something I wanted to bring back because I was doing a lot more of it
Yeah.
during lockdown and I felt much better for it. So just having a simple 20-minute cyclical warm up before most sessions and looking to do maybe a longer piece on one of the off days from the gym. And key benefits to that are improving my work capacity and recovery. So being able to push harder in the sessions where I am at the gym, and also having more energy the rest of the time is a nice way to to feel like you've trained, or
Yeah.
feel like you've had a hard session, but you have trained.
Yeah.
You've provided a useful stimulus to the body without taxing yourself. So the key theme across all of this is basically staying well below my maximum recoverable volume and slowly nudging it up over time. Through the zone 2 work, my maximum recoverable volume will go up, but I'm staying well short of it regardless. So as long as I'm getting a stimulus to get better, that's all good. And I think the zone 2 health benefits are also something that a lot of people should be building in. I think it's very easy to focus on performance and aesthetics as very tangible goals. But if we really care about our health, zone 2 should be a bigger part of most people's cardio than it actually is for the cardiovascular benefits.
Yeah, I just think with zone 2, I know just from my own experience, it's like weighing up the thing of sitting on, say, a bike for, say, an hour doing zone 2, getting off feeling like I could have done more, and then compare that to I can lift a barbell, get a pump, leave feeling like fuck, I can't do any more. It's you're thinking with the zone 2, you're thinking future self. With the barbells and the pump, you're thinking present self. So it's like for me, it's definitely something that I want to incorporate more of, and off the back of that podcast as well. It's a shame that I couldn't be on it, but it's definitely something that I do want to incorporate, because I really enjoyed it when I was doing my cycling. Like generally when I was going out for cycles in the morning, and going out for long rides, like a couple of hours at a time, where most of it was in zone 2, and you'd feel really good. I'd have peaks out of it, so I don't know how like legit that is, obviously overall, but generally I go through blocks of zone 2 cycling, and it was great. So I'm definitely looking forward to incorporating that within my training. Are you going to be keeping it all low intensity, or are you going to be, because I know there's obviously quite a lot of benefits of including like some very high heart rate stuff within your training. I remember hearing, I think it was Peter Attia, and I think it was him and Huberman were talking about like making sure you do a form of like intervals for having the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, so they're going to be unplanned essentially. So I sometimes go running at the track once a week. So yeah, you can hold me accountable to that, and that'll be the time where I get the higher intensity. But one of the reasons for doing this sort of lower volume plan in the gym is to open up some volume outside of the gym. So I'm actually going to my first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class on Monday.
Whoa,
So might open that can of worms.
nice.
And yeah, the running, I'll probably do one interval session every week or two for the higher intensity stuff. But I think, yeah, as I said before, erring on the side of too little rather than too much. It's
Yeah.
always easier to add than subtract, because psychologically that's a win rather than a loss. So I'm going to try and keep myself there, and yeah, see how I go. I can always course correct if I don't feel like I'm getting what I want out of it, but I'm pretty confident that if I stick to this plan consistently, I can see things improving significantly.
Oh mate, that sounds awesome. I can't wait to see how your BJJ journey goes. Like I would love to. I really would. Like for the few times that I've done a bit of wrestling, like for fun, like I've loved it. It's just like the way you feel just afterwards, it just feels great. And I'd love to try it, but it's the time. I just don't think I have that much time, and I would want to give everything to it, and I then can't afford to do 2-a-days really. So because I still want to do my strength stuff and bodybuilding essentially as well, but I know if I got into it, what everyone says, once you're in, like you're in that rabbit hole. So
Yeah, that is a slight concern, but yeah, we'll scratch and sniff, see what happens. um, how about you, mate? You've had some changes. I've seen some cool old school strongman stuff going down. Can
yeah,
you tell us what it is?
yeah. I mean, like after my competition, it's kind of left a bit of a hole in my training, because it was like that was such a clear goal. And just like with anyone that competes, is in like once your competition happens, what they talk about all the time, like it's like the post comp blues and stuff. Like I haven't felt depressed or anything like that, but I've just, because I'm still over the moon what I did, but I'm just like, what's next? and like, what am I training for? And it's like, I know I still want to be strong. And it's like, it's funny. I was then like, okay, like, what do I want to do? And I'm seeing all the stuff like people doing high rocks and stuff like that on social media. I'm like, that must be what I want to do. Or the marathon, that must be what I want to do. And then it's like, when I actually take a step back, I'm like, I don't really want to run that much. I just don't. So I'm like, the reality is, it's like, I'm trying to put myself into a box because I see it's what everyone else is doing. And I think that's what I'm missing when I know it's not. Because it's not what I necessarily. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy running to some respect. Like when I was doing my triathlon training, I really enjoyed it. But again, it's the time and it's the amount of time you have to give to these endurance sports. I just personally I don't want to give that much time to endurance training compared to what I may have in the past. But hence why I've kind of started dabbling into the world of some of my old school strongman. Like strongman in general is something that I've always kind of wanted to try as well, but I've never been to a specialist gym to actually do the stuff. So I've always had to kind of either like make something myself or just sandbags, D-ball, stuff like that, just trying to create the similar stimulus. But seeing a lot of like the old school or old time strongman stuff where basically you're lifting things unconventionally, and the way I used to call it, like this was a couple of years ago when I was doing bits, was like circus lifting, because that is what it reminds you of. It's like you back in the day, because like strength was a spectacle, and it's like people used to go and watch like these people lift these heavy barbells above their head in like one way or another. Like I only found out the other day that like the snatch used to be you had to have your arms parallel and you couldn't right, and so it had to go up in one motion, and when it goes up is so you couldn't press it out. So like this is going back to like 1902 or something like that. So like it was, and I was reading like this book, and it's why a lot of people as well, you know, like with the split snatch, and they took that out of the Olympics, and it's all these things. I'm just like, I'm seeing some of these old school movements, and I'm just like, that looks fun. And that's kind of the way I've kind of thought I can, since I've had all this time focusing on building my strength towards something, rather than just having it as an opportunity to display strength, I'm going to now use my strength and see what I can do. And I've always been quite proud of how, you know, carrying washing machines, ovens, and like very odd objects. Like I've been able to do all that stuff. And I was like, do you know what? Some of these unconventional barbell lifts, and it's just an opportunity for me to do something very familiar with, but maybe in an unfamiliar way. And so what I gave myself the target of doing is throughout the month of January is to basically do all my lifts from the floor. So basically, even if it's a back squat, I have to get it from the floor, basically not use a rack. So same with the bench press or anything. I don't know whether I can still incorporate the bench. I haven't kind of said it has to be a floor press, but that's like details. But basically, I don't want to use a rack. That's my goal of the month. Just play. Like for instance, yesterday I did a one-handed deadlift and managed to hit 153 kilos, which is then over 50% of my two-handed deadlift. And that was what I wanted to say. Could I do that? And it's like, it's just, for me, it's just fun. And that's kind of what I'm like, and then when it's funny, then I then feel not bad, but I'm like, it must mean I'm not actually working towards something because I'm just having fun in the gym. And I'm like, well, that's what training is. Like if I'm choosing to use my hour of training to just kind of have fun and play, it's like I did a like 45 or 50 minute EMOM the other week, and it was like the first one was just safety bar walks like a yoke in a way. So I loaded up, walked the length of the gym and back. Then I did some suitcase carries with the barbells in each hand. So just carrying a barbell in each hand with 60 kilos, length of the gym and back. Then I did quite a fun one, which was sandbag onto the box and then crawl under the box. So I did it. So rather than jumping over the box, I crawled under it, and just crawling was just different. I was like, I loved it. It was just something a bit of fun. And then I had box jump overs. So jumping over a 30-inch box. So not touching it. So, and I did like every 2 or 3 minutes. I can't remember. I think it was every 2 minutes. I did one of the exercises and just rested around time. It's about a minute on, a minute off roughly. So, and I didn't have too many constraints. I just moved, and it's like a fun bit of conditioning, but like strongman focused. And so it's quite cool. But even though I'm playing, I have had to have some structure. So I've given myself the goal yet again to try and lose some weight. and hopefully this time I actually get myself through, because weighed myself the other day and I actually weighed in at 110. So I was like, fuck, I have definitely settled at this 110 kilo weight. So that was just for the competition, and it's kind of hung around. So I'm the fact that Cadbury's released a white chocolate cream egg didn't help either. That is very, very tasty. And but yeah, so I've given myself a body composition goal of getting down to 95 kilos, and I've given myself a weight just so I actually have a number to aim for. Because otherwise, I know when I've done it before, like, yeah, I want to get down to where I'm happy or something like that. I'm happy now, but I want to be better. I want to have a better looking physique for myself, and I want to actually try and commit to something. So yes, I've just had another kid, so I always like to do these things at probably not the best time. But 95 kilos for me is quite a comfortable place to be. So that's a 15 kilo loss, and I've said to myself, I don't have too much of a time constraint on when I achieve it. And I want to try and do, so like 3 weeks of a deficit, maybe 1 week off at maintenance. And I basically cycling through that. So I can still train hard, still train for strength and say strength and size, but not necessarily stress myself too much. So
that's nice, mate. I like the old school strongman stuff. I think it's closer to more useful strength, I guess I'd say, like escaping the squat bench dead of, adding a few kilos to your bench press isn't going to impact your life, but being able to move odd objects might do. And you'll probably feel a lot better as well, because you're exploring new ranges, new positions. So I think that play component is massively underrated for the effect that it has on your body. It's kind of similar to the plyo stuff, right? That you're bouncing around, moving in lots of different directions. That's actually much more transferable to life than very strict, specific strength. So
yeah. I think as well, it's I think with this style of strongman training as well, it's like, because I feel I've always been relatively good at odd object stuff anyway, it's like it's a way to kind of add some structure to it. That even though there's not even, I've not got loads of structure to it anyway, I'm just kind of exploring positions and ranges. And like for me, it's like lifting doesn't take much thought. It's now, you get under a barbell. I know my sequence. I know what to do. I know how to lift. Don't get me wrong. I could definitely be better across the board probably on certain things and learn new things. But for me, with a barbell, I'm pretty confident to how to do most things. So to do these things, it's like yesterday with the one-handed deadlift. So I know how to lift a bar with one hand, but then feeling how I have to shift the load in through my fingers to kind of get it. Or like when I was doing some overhead barbell bent presses. So like getting a barbell overhead in one hand, rotating my body and pressing it up overhead, and feeling that bar rotate in my hand and my shoulders and having to stabilize that. And I'm having to think while I'm lifting. So I'm so present. That's what I love, and it's kind of a theme that I've noticed that I've kind of tried to get a lot of my training and stuff to do, is like to get a lot more in the present with things, because it's so easy to get distracted by everything else going on around you. And like for me, it's like I do love a bandwagon. I love seeing what things are doing and trying things out and stuff, but that's all distractions from what you're trying to do. And it's like it was the Hyrox thing that really made me realize, it's like, I think it'd be kind of cool to do, and just like I've done most things, so just to give it a go. But at the same time, I'm like, do I really want to do it right now? Probably not. I just think because most people around me are doing it, that's why I think I want to do it, to join in with the crowd. So, but that's why I'm trying to do something a little bit different and more focused around what I might want to do. But the plyos for me that's been such a cool little change as well. Like, I might be 110 kilos, but I had a deep, like 44-inch jump the other day, which I was pretty impressed with. Like, to be able to move that much at my, say, body weight, just for how long, I haven't done any plyos in ages. So to do that was a bit like, okay, I still got it. I still got something. And it's like, that was cool. Like from that podcast, and the same as like with you with the Zone 2 stuff, like for me, I want to drop my overall training volume down, but then incorporate days of Zone 2. So just, and like have that as like maybe on my off days or something, like similar to what you do. I don't know if I could do 20 minutes Zone 2 before training. I don't know if I could do that. I might try, but this feels like a long time before I actually stop any work. And when I've only got about an hour to train, I think I might use that time elsewhere, but it's been cool. It's been really cool, like having some of these, like this is why I've loved the podcast as well, like just discussions like this, and it just sparks thoughts, and just like, oh, okay, or like, getting specialists on where we can kind of hear these things and hear maybe holes in our training ourselves or our clients training, like why we don't incorporate certain things. So it's cool. It's really cool.
That's good, mate. Yeah, I think hopefully there's a few useful tidbits in there for everybody listening. I think it's a natural point to reflect on your year, what went well, and what didn't go so well last year. I think, as Rob said, it's important to consider what your goals are, whether they're actually your goals or they're somebody else's, and how directly you want to pursue them, because that is a sliding scale. Like, you can go for the perfectly optimal training program, which is ruthlessly and militantly going after very specific goals, but there's a cost to that, in that you might compromise the fun and variety and the sustainability of the program as well. So just be aware of that, make that call. And I think one of my big learnings was what's the risk reward on flirting with your maximum recoverable volume actually. So is it worth like, you've got to consider all the different stresses on your body, whether it's social life or work or sleep or whatever else is competing for your recovery capacity. How close do you actually want to be to that line? Because if you're living quite close to that line and you're training as hard as you possibly can, it only takes a small upset to push you over the edge. It might actually result in a setback. You might get sick, you might get injured, whatever it might be. So is it worth actually going a bit more conservative with your training week? And then you can always dial it up if you're not getting the results that you want. But if you're getting the results that you want with less effort and time in, then for most people, that's a win. So yeah, I think we'll wrap it there, unless you've got anything else to add, mate.
No, I think for me, like having Dylan, just it happened the same thing with Chloe. It's like, it just gives you like a little reset of just life, of just like, okay, cool, this is someone starting at zero, and is in like, you're looking at all the things that they have coming up, and like, or that you hope for them and stuff like that, and you just like, then that puts things in perspective for you. And what's great about having kids is it just stops you and just reminds you of the simplicity of life. And it's like I mentioned at the start, you can complicate it as much as you want and make your life this like you said with the training plan, make it this like ever-ending like journey of something. Or you can take a step back and have a bit of fun, have a bit of play, and like still have some guidance and still have some structure going towards probably a goal of some sort, but maybe taking a little detour here and there and stuff like that. And unless you have a set date where you have to do something, then that's completely different, and that's not the conversation for you. But for most people, I think we get so hung up on having to do everything so perfectly, and this is coming from me exactly, because this is what I end up doing. Everything has to be so right, and if it's not, you're then the other extreme. It's the all or nothing mentality, and it's like it's a really hard mentality to not be, if that's the way you are. And this is, I'm still very much like that, but I'm trying to see the light outside of the all or nothing. And maybe sometimes that's where I'm trying to find my sometimes. So, but yeah, we hope you did get something from today's episode. It's always nice to kind of, I think when I like listen to episodes like this from other people do them, kind of makes you spark thoughts in your training, like what you mentioned at the start. So, and like your lifestyle, hopefully something you pulled out from something from today, and you change something in your life potentially, and it helps you for the better. If you do, we would love to hear. You can send us a message on Instagram. We will only be checking very minimal times though, but head over to @lunge.lift and send us a message on there. If you want us to cover any topics this year, or maybe revisit anything we've done, we would love to hear from you, and maybe tell us what you'd like to hear. Then we'll get that started. But as always, thank you very much. Happy New Year again, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers, guys.